So do bad as welcome to Bad Boy Running. Our next guest, you've heard us talk about through the years, and Kate was fairly new to the scene to us when he smashed all the Americans in the first kind of international backyards ultra, and this year broke what world record? I think we can call it the world record, but the furthest ever anyone's done in the format to run over 600 kilometers, which is just insane. So, welcome to the podcast, the wonderful Merijn Geerts.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good of you to join us. Where are you based at the moment then?
Well, I'm in Leuven in Belgium. It's a student city not far from Brussels, if you know where that is.
I mean, Jody and I have visited Belgium together four times, I think, maybe five times.
Yeah, I know.
That's nice.
It's a nice, lovely, romantic destination that we always end up.
Indeed.
Okay.
Well, we love the Beer Lovers Marathon out there, the greatest race on earth. So
yeah, I haven't been there, but maybe I should do that once.
So fun,
yeah.
And just a great atmosphere as well, and so many good Belgian beers. Are you a Belgian beer drinker, I assume, or?
I like drink some beer. I like a lot of beers actually. So yeah, I do. Not too many. I can't stand them anymore, but yeah. Have a beer once in a while. That's nice.
And you were saying earlier you're a food inspector. So not a food inspector, I guess a food inspector, but not of fresh foods. So out of interest, how does that work?
Yeah, well, it's in factories and wholesalers of lots of different foodstuffs, well, beer amongst others, but also like biscuits or coffee or and also animal food and fertilizer. So factories and wholesalers in this kind of stuff. We inspect them, we take samples, so that's what I do as a living.
And do you sometimes have to take very large samples home with you?
Yeah. Well, you know, actually not, but yeah, that would be nice, but it's not part of the job.
And what kind of percentage of companies fail?
Well, it's there's so much legislation, so to be 100% okay with everything is very difficult. But it's about basic hygiene and having some like traceability and documentation. And then if you take samples, there shouldn't be any contaminants in the foodstuff, in the animal food, or so that's it basically. And if there's some minor stuff that's not really okay, then we can tell them to address it. But there's no big measurements to be taken. That's only if it's entirely not as it should be.
Are these planned visits, or do you just kind of like turn up, throw the doors open, and then you say, "All right, I'm checking everything out today"?
It can be both, but our normal inspections should be not planned. So. Yeah, we show up and we try to do the inspection. Depends. If the company is very small, if it's just one person and they're not home, then we can't go in. So, but yeah.
And how do people react? Do they sometimes barricade the doors and they're like, no, you can't come in, or
no? Usually not. Everyone is trying to do their best to make a good product. So yeah, and they understand you need to control them, because if you're not doing it at their place, you're not doing it anywhere else. So you could have unhealthy competition by doing stuff that's not allowed. So. Yeah, if you have rules, you have to inspect them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm fascinated because I'm in the food industry to a certain extent with caffeine.
Yeah, don't go round his factory. Whatever you do, that's he's getting some inside information. So, what happens when someone comes around? What technically can we do to avoid being inspected? That kind of thing.
Exactly. What's the defense against it?
Yeah, you can avoid. You make sure it's everything's all right, or and you cooperate by making it better, and yeah. So it's interesting to see all these different kind of places where they make stuff, where they sell stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So when did you first start kind of running relatively seriously then?
That's ultra running is I think in 2018, so that's 4 years and a half ago. I did run from my age 37, so that must have been like 5 years earlier or so. But that was like I did run 1 or 2 marathons in this period of time. But the ultra running started 4 years and a half ago.
And when you ran those marathons, were you training high mileage? Were you going for flat out pace or?
Yeah, no, I ran my first marathon within 2 years of starting to run. At age 37, I wanted to get healthier, lose some weight. So I started running, and then someone asked me, "Don't you want to run a road race?" And from one road race, it went to another one, a bit further, and then you end up doing a marathon. But if it's within roughly the first 2 years of running, at that age, you're not. You have to be either very talented or I think I ran 3 hours and 22 minutes. So you want to, in a marathon, you want to get the best time out of it possible. But that's not what I like in the end. So that's why I don't like running. It's okay to run a marathon, but it's not my thing anymore. So
what don't
Did
you
you have
like
any?
about it?
Oh, sorry.
I'll say, Jody.
well, it's always about getting a time. You have to always, if you want to, yeah, you could make a long walk out of it or something, but usually you try to make it the best performance you have in you at that time with the training you've had. So you're always running at the border of what's possible, and if you go a little bit too fast, you hit a wall. So it's very intense all the time. While in trail running and ultra trail running, you're much more like it's maybe a long kind of interval where you have less intense moments of running, where you have a lot of recuperation, and trying to last as long as you can. So that's what I like more.
Well, before you took up running, did you ever do any kind of other sports? Did you ever have any kind of like athletic interest and stuff and anything like that? So that when you took up running, you could think back to having done that, or was this basically your first ever endeavor into kind
Yeah,
of
no, I liked watching sports, but no.
That's good enough.
No, I did some gymnastics recreational in my youth,
Okay.
and then in my 20s, a few years of badminton with a friend, so that was nice. But you can't say it was high level sports. And I did play snooker for a competition for like 20 or 25 years. So that's not a very physical sport, but it's
I didn't know
competitive.
snooker
So
was popular in Belgium.
well, we have like there's a Belgian player in the top 16. Huh?
Oh,
I don't know
okay.
if you know.
No idea.
I heard somewhere you find snooker a bit boring, maybe, but
Well, I mean, it's very popular in the
it's
UK in
popular with you,
general.
yeah.
I get. I mean,
Yeah,
I'd say the 80s was the absolute peak. It was
yeah, I
possibly
know.
the biggest sport on TV in the UK, from
Yeah,
what I
I know.
recall.
With the final between Steve Davis and yeah, I forgot his name.
Dennis
Uh, Dennis Taylor.
Dennis
Yeah.
Yes.
Taylor,
So
yes.
yeah, we all know that. With the snooker playing Belgians all know that. So no, I like that, but I didn't do any intense sports until I started running, and even then, in the beginning, was like just to get healthier. And then I discovered ultra running, ultra trail running, backyard running, and it got out of hand a little bit.
Because what was that first ultra trail?
Well, it was the first really long ultra was another one by the dust. It's called. It's organized by Legends Trails in Belgium, and it was like the winter before this race. I started doing trail races in Belgium in the Ardennes, which is a really nice and also difficult terrain to run in. It's a lot of uphill, downhill. It's not very high, but it's always it's never flat. So you would think Belgium is flat, but in the southern part of Belgium, the Ardennes, it's not so flat. And then I did some trail races, about 30, 35 kilometers. And then the beginning of June, 50 kilometers. So that was a difficult one. And then a month later, I did another one by the dust, which is basically a backyard, but with not the official distance. So it doesn't count for Laz's backyard qualifications or whatever. And I did 189 kilometers. So in 1 month, I went to from marathon distance maximum to a 50K and then to 189.
Wow.
To my own surprise and everybody else.
To your own surprise.
Yeah, I didn't know I could do it.
And so was it approximately a 1 mile lap as well in another mountain bike?
It was like 6.3 kilometers. So, and in kilometers, it should be 6.7. So it's a few hundred meters shorter than the official distance. But it's not the intent of the race is not to be in the qualification competition for backyards. They did find the inspiration with Laz's concept, of course, but for me it was I got to know ultra running by this race.
And at what point, if you were to kind of compare in that first backyard, how you were feeling throughout the time? Because you must have come in with an approximate number of laps or approximate distance in mind. And how did you then feel as you were increasing that mileage?
Well, based on the 50 kilometers difficult trail I did the month before, I thought I should be able to do 100 kilometers. So, and then in myself, I thought if I feel well, I want to reach the 100 miles, because in this race you get a medal if you reach 100 miles. So that's more or less the goal of everyone that does this race. It also has the rules of there's one winner, but after a while everything hurts, but I still felt like I could do one more loop every hour, and that's what you keep thinking or telling yourself now after I've done quite a lot of backyards. You can always do one more loop, or you tell yourself that at least. And that's the way to keep going.
Because even then, I'd have said it. You know, if you've done a marathon, then a 50K, the jump to 100K is an assumption, especially within a month. I think is quite a big assumption, because normally I'd estimate people to rest for kind of 2-3 weeks after a 50K anyway, let alone to just go out and double the distance.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I always felt like after that one, I did more than once, did like a 100-mile or 100-kilometer 1 week, and the other weekend 100 miles. So you can wonder is this wise to do it like this? But if you feel what you feel in your body, you can feel like I can have it, I can do it. It's also the way you're doing it, because I've always, since I started trail running, I've always felt like compared to a marathon hurts much longer. If you're trail running, you're doing the same distances or much longer distances, but because of the variation in terrain, because the uphill, downhill, and the variation in intensity, you don't break down your body as much. So in recovery afterwards, it takes less time. It's better than a marathon. So.
And in terms of that first race, so the first backyard format, when you were the other runners are dropping out, what do you think it was about that format that was suiting you more than them? Because on paper you're a good runner, but it's not as if you're so fast that you were just completely relaxed running around in an hour. On paper you could have been the same as everyone else.
No, yeah, you could say I'm a decent runner, but not a top, not the one that's gonna win races, road racers or anything. So, no, I think it must be mental, because it's a powerful thing if you can say to yourself, if anyone, I've said things like this to myself from the beginning. If anyone asks you, is everything okay? You could say yes, and it's a bluff, or you could say no. I'm feeling a little bit hurt everywhere, but that's what we signed up for, didn't we? So you can acknowledge that you're in pain, but you're still okay enough to do another loop. And then when you start seeing other people around you who look like they could be the same type of runner, they have the same type of body as yourself, and the same kind of speed, and they're starting to look much worse than you think you're feeling. That's that's when you think, I could go on a little bit, and okay, I feel a little bit used, but there's some loops in me, and it helps if the other ones are starting to fall out, and even if you like him, yeah.
So you almost need that comparative analysis of thinking maybe I'm not that bad by seeing others.
Yeah, maybe it's like that. Yeah, it's always, of course, in the team world championship like we had now, and the one 2 years ago, you don't want your teammates to go out early, so that's becoming very different, a different approach. But even then, in my first another one bites the dust in the first backyard, there's people who are there to run 2 loops or 3, just to have fun, and then maybe some will do 5 because they never run this distance before. So you have people falling out early. But when you're doing a backyard where there's much better runners that have the ambition to go far, and you see and you know them, from up ahead, you know how good they are, and even then you feel like I'm hurt, and they have to stop. That's that gives you it gives some motivation.
And do you think you have an ability where you don't degrade, like your running form or your muscles don't wear down as quickly as faster runners, as other runners?
It may be one cause, but that's also something you have control over yourself. If you One of the things you should do in a backyard is pace yourself very much. Don't go too fast. Don't run everything. You can run 1 or 2 loops if you want to entirely. If you want to feel good about yourself, it helps. But you should, from the beginning, try to be as comfortable as you can for as long as you can. So eat well. Don't run too fast, and keep the impact as low as possible. And then maybe some people do recover faster or degrade slower than others. So that must be the case.
And out of interest, what is your running style like? Are you a 4-foot runner, a kind of a midsole slapper? Do you lift your feet quite high? Are you a shuffler? Are you a bouncy type of runner? Like, how would you describe your running action?
Well, I think it's more 4-foot, mid-foot strike, but it's not extremely 4-foot. But I changed it when I started trail running around that time. I was a heel striker because I thought you should run like this, and then somebody told me no, you should take smaller steps and run more on the 4-foot, and I never heard of it, so I looked it up. I did some reading about it, and apparently it did exist. You didn't have to land on the heel and then roll your foot forward. So no, and yeah, the longer the distance, the more you shuffle a bit. But if you shuffle too much, then you start to, like, I don't know how to explain it. You feel too slow, you become slow. Your body posture isn't very well anymore. So you should be aware that if you go like this, you're not gonna run very well anymore. So even if you feel tired.
So you've almost got to keep a positive physical attitude.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're capable, and that's. I mean, do you manage to attain that? Like, obviously you must see like video and everything of yourself at the start and at the end. Like, is there a huge difference, or do you think that's one of the advantages you have that allows you to do that? The fact that you can maintain that posture.
Well, you have to tell yourself it on a regular basis, but that's one of the things that doesn't make it too boring. You have to be on top of everything. You have to be aware of what you're doing. So it takes that long of time. So it would get boring if you would have to keep your mind busy with other stuff. So it's one of the things that makes it interesting enough to do it this long. And maybe another thing, I don't think I look very fresh from the beginning. So if you're talking about, and that's if it's about influencing your opponent, you could say if someone looks very fresh from the beginning, and then suddenly it doesn't look so fresh anymore, there's a problem. But if you don't look very bright all the time, then your opponent doesn't know when you're actually suffering.
So really, you should turn up kind of dressed like a homeless person, and then
well,
slowly
I don't know, but
do your washing, put on a tuxedo, just.
Well, I don't know, but like my hair is always a bit fuzzy, so I don't look like perfectly combed and styled and yeah, it's not on purpose, but it's just the way it is. And yeah,
do you think people ascribe, because you're so successful at this and doing it? Do you think people ascribe to you doing mind games even when you're not? Do they must think, just even the way that you're saying it, very kind of like that, they say, it's all part of his clever plan. Like, or whenever you talk to anyone, everyone's sort of going, he's using mind games, I can't understand what he's saying, but he said he's okay. What do we read into that? Do people think like you have an advantage in that respect and treat you as such?
That's exactly what people who know me from this running community here, that's exactly what they think about me. Because after my first another one bites the dust, I ran it 5 times now. I became the assist in the first one, and I won it the 3 times after. So then people started thinking like, when there's only 2 or 3 and Merijn is there, he's now we can play his mind games. I don't necessarily do any mind games, but even yeah, in the beginning it wasn't like that, but right now, if I would do a backyard and you've done one before and you did like 24 loops, and now we're going over 60 loops and you're with me, you're gonna be impressed by me. I don't have to do anything, so my reputation does it for me.
Yeah,
it doesn't mean anything because you could have done much less in the past and you could still beat me, but yeah, that's what everybody thinks now.
And do you
so
think
you're basically your achievements are intimidating enough without you having to do mind games?
Well, for most people, probably not for someone like Harvey or Ivo and like Keith Russell and all the other guys that can go this far, but someone that's new and still very much under the impression of what we do, yeah, it's it's like a mind play on its own.
And do you think reputation? Do you think it's better then not to be thinking about the other runners and just focusing on yourself, or can it be useful to have that distract? Because you've said how it brings you power when someone else looks bad. Like, so do you think there is a balance between focusing on yourself and not being influenced by your surroundings, or actually using that to your advantage and looking for external influence?
Well, in fact, you should only be looking at yourself and taking care of yourself. So yeah, I and this thing about looking at others is just every little thing that you can use to make yourself feel better. It helps, but it's all about being aware of yourself and taking care for yourself. So it's not actually it's not about impressing the other one, because if he's good enough, he's not gonna let himself be impressed by you.
And do you then tactically decide if when you're getting towards the end game, are you running side by side? Do you try and be in front? Do you try and be behind?
Well, you could do, like, when there's only two of you, you could do like one faster loop than you're used to. But just to show the other one that you're still there, something like that, or just to prove it to yourself, I don't know. But in the end, you have to do your own pacing. So if you're gonna run faster, then it's good for you. You don't gonna last too long. And if you're running slower, you could run slower, easy, or just walk a little more. But then you have less time between loops. So you have to just do your own thing in the end.
Because
when you do ultras and when you do kind of trail races and stuff, when. I mean, again, this is what's so good about the backyard format, is the fact that there is this controlled element to it. But certainly, like with a trail race or something like that, you can run at a certain pace and feel like you're holding back, and you're saving it and things like that. It with the kind of the distance you're running and everything. I mean, does it ever get to a point where do you always feel like you're kind of running with a lot in the tank, in order to be able to do that? I mean, it's the pacing aspect that confuses so many people as to how you plan. You don't know how long you're going to run, so how much do you hold back? Do you kind of come over the line, feeling kind of like 60% or whatever, and try and do that as much as possible, and then, like you say, run a fast one, every now and then, just to kind of show to people, like, how does it kind of feel up to a certain point, and then does it get to a point where you're kind of you can't really tell anymore? It's just that feeling in your body as you're doing it. How does that work over that kind of distance?
Well, I think you mean when you're running like a marathon and it goes worse. It's a line that's going down.
Yeah.
But in I feel it's the same for backyards as for ultra trail races, and it's different, for example, in a 24-hour race, where you also, like in a marathon, you're trying to go as far as you can. Athletically speaking, you're trying to get the maximum out of it. But in a backyard, I feel like it's going up and down. So you try to be as comfortable as possible, but there's gonna be some loops where maybe you haven't eaten enough. You everything hurts more than you would want to, and then you could feel like this is the end. It's the way down, and it's not going to go up again. But if you've done everything right, it can go up again. You can have like a loop where there's not much in the tank when you finish the loop, and then if you do everything right, a few loops later, you can have a lot more in the tank. Because energy wise, that's what you eat during the race. If you run a road race or a marathon, most of your energy comes from what you've eaten before. In a long ultra trail, in 100 miles or further, or in a backyard that lasts a few days, your energy comes from the food you eat during the race. So it's going up and down.
And as you've progressed from that first backyard format to the 600K, have you refined your eating, and do you change your eating throughout that period? Have you found that it's very different, the last 200K to the first 4, for example?
No, it's not very much different. And I think accidentally the first time I did more or less most things right, but more like without knowing what I was doing, just instinctively I've done the right things. And then afterwards I was, you don't know if you want to do it again before this one. And afterwards my interest was woken up. So I was intrigued by this very long distances, 100 miles and more. and I started thinking about what do you do right? It's trial and error. What did I do right in this one? What do I do? What should I change? And that's what also makes this an experiment. This other running very like an interesting experiment with your body, mind, trying to figure out what works. So yeah, I found out that you should eat normal food when you're out there for days in a row, which sounds very logical, but yeah.
And what types of food do you typically go to, and how varied is your food?
Well, it's like and I've been doing this more and more because in the beginning you always have the aid station with the usual trail junk food, you could say, the cookies and chips and gummies and if you eat too much or bars or whatever, if you eat too much of this, then you fill up your stomach with basically junk. And then when somebody comes up with a healthy, balanced meal, and your stomach is filled up, you can't eat it. That's a shame because that's what you need. You need a balanced, normal meal every few hours. So like a breakfast, a lunch, supper, or how do you call it, and then maybe something in the middle of the night. And in between, I don't eat very much.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because if you, also try to eat like a decent amount of this normal food, maybe spread out over 2 hours. So if you're coming from the table and you've just filled yourself up quite good, you don't need to eat for the next 2 or 3 hours. So you drink something, maybe like one cookie or something, and then you can run another loop until you feel like the stomach is empty, the nutrition is not coming into your blood flow, and that's a balance you need to find.
And are you eating? Because I know fiber obviously takes longer to pass through the system, and carbohydrates is more heavily lent on in endurance, but protein obviously plays a part the longer you go. So, are you having a lot of fiber and protein?
Well, yes, I think so, but I'm not deliberately choosing this. I just it depends on the kind of race. Some races provide the meals, so you just take what's provided, and if you have take care of it yourself, you try to make sure there's something also depending on if there's a possibility for your crew to cook something or it has to be very basically. It depends, but yeah, it's just about eating normal food.
And you mentioned about timing previously. I did notice the first time when they had the international backyard that it was very obvious that the Belgian runners were finishing quite a few minutes each lap before the American runners, and seemed to be almost having a slightly different approach to the format by buying more time to relax or to recover or to recuperate or manage or organize. Like was that intentional? And if so, what do you think that extra time brought you?
Yeah, I think that's mainly because of the course. And I think we were especially faster during when the Americans were on their daytime loop, which is the quite difficult trail loop. I haven't been there yet, so I'm very curious to find out how difficult it is exactly. But I think in the nighttime when they have the road loop, they're probably more or less the same pace as we did. So I think most people try to find a pace that gives them as much time in between loops as possible without exhausting themselves too much. So,
and what's your routine when you come in?
Yeah, usually, I have some kind of a schedule made up based on my experience and for my crew to know what I've planned on what I thought I needed. So it can be I plan like what I want to eat, more or less what time, what type of things I want to drink, what and then sometimes you have to go to the bathroom. So if like from the third night, try to sleep a little bit for a few minutes. So it's just always seeing what you need, trying to, if possible, if you can, the loop before, if you can ask your crew or what if there's anything special you need them to prepare, then they've got it ready for you. And if it's sometimes it's not possible, you only know when you finish the loop what you need. So you sit down, you put your feet up, you ask them what you need. This time we had like we had some physios for of 15 runners. I had a physio who's done it for a second time now, good friend Irit, who does the massages while I'm sitting down, eating something, drinking something. So everything to keep you in shape.
And did you say then you don't sleep for the first 2 nights?
Basically, I don't bother. Yeah, I should probably try to sleep the second night, but I don't. I feel I lose energy by trying to sleep the first night. It's too.
You're not tired enough to sleep, you
I'm
think?
not tired enough to sleep, and I can't sleep on command. So if you only have 10 minutes and you have to lie down and immediately fall asleep, that's not possible when I'm not tired enough. And then during the daytime, you're not going to be tired. It's something biological. When there's daylight, you stay awake. And the second night, I don't bother trying to sleep unless I feel very tired, which can happen. But it's the same as in the first night. If I don't feel tired, then I could lie down and close my eyes. But I much rather sit down and chat with my crew and do the other stuff I need to do.
Does tiredness affect you? Do you? I mean, like, do you feel it has a massively detrimental effect upon you, or is it something that you feel quite capable of coping with? Does it? I think a lot of people when they step up to do 100-milers or races that go over 24 hours, depending on how long they take, it's the worry or not knowing how they're going to deal with tiredness. When you first did it, were you surprised by how well you coped with it? Were there any kind of shocks or anything else that kind of came out of that?
No, it's very difficult. You get used to it, but it's very difficult. It's the most difficult thing is the sleep deprivation, and not only in backyard, in the long ultra trails that take you like 3 days up to a week. You can, I feel I can go on for 2 nights without too much problems, feeling a bit tired, but the third night it can really hit you, and you can be like walking along your route, and then you notice you're falling over. You wake up while you're falling over in the side. So that's yeah. In my first Legends trail that I did, it's a 250K trail race that's inspired by the Spine race. You probably know from the UK. Most people need a third night, and you can sleep if you want along the way, but I didn't. And then in the third night, it was really, really difficult sleep-wise. So I promised to myself, if I did this ever again, I would sleep more before the third night. And then it turned out in the beginning of this year, I did the Spine race, which is longer, and in the end I slept less. So
overall you slept less
yeah,
because
overall I slept
a bit
probably a little bit more, but I did sleep less per night or because it was longer. But somehow, if you brace yourself for it, if you know it's gonna happen, you're better prepared, and you can take it.
And are you almost winding down mentally as you're coming in, knowing you've got to sleep in that 10-minute gap?
Well, I not necessarily knowing, because I know this is what you ask is a tactic of some people. The last few 100 meters they walk, they close their eyes a little bit, and they do let their heart rate drop down. So if they want to sleep, they can sleep easier. But I sometimes do something like this while I'm on the course. So if it's flat enough, if there's no bumps, you can close your eyes and just walk for a few meters and yeah, just do some kind of a sleepwalk where you're walking in a straight line and just switch off a little bit. I don't know how to explain it
Almost a
exactly, but it's
meditation.
yeah. So, and I feel like it's you're not sleeping, you're not trying not to lose control. Where you suddenly wake up in the side and maybe you've been lying there for an hour, but that's not what you want. But you can during the night when everything is dark, you have like the vision of your headlight, so your world becomes much smaller. It's only the what you can see in your light, and you can switch off mentally a little bit, and this way deal with the sleep deprivation.
And,
In
and,
some
and what
way.
are those final sleep? So when you're at kilometer 550, 570, what is that sleep like? Is it significantly different to how we'd experience sleep?
When you do get to sleep, well, I think I only slept like half an hour in total, so it's like 5 minutes here and 5 minutes there, and I I have the feeling if you go too deep, that's not a good thing. In Germany earlier this year when I did 90 loops against Keith Russell stopped at 89. I also didn't slept very little, but one time in one of the last loops, between one of the last loops, I slept for 10 minutes, quite deep. People heard me snore, and so they woke me up when it was time to leave, and I did leave, but it was like I was gone too far away and couldn't get out of it. So I feel like doing these little naps is good, but don't go too far away or it's like you're gone.
And how long does it take you to recover from when you did the 600K? I mean, are you just sleeping for 2 days solid, or?
It's difficult to say when you're entirely recovered. It's hard to pinpoint, but the first night you don't sleep that much. Everything hurts too much, so you can sleep for. I think I slept for 6 hours, which is okay. And then it's the week after you sleep. Okay, you need some longer nights to catch up with sleep. But how long? I think the sleep deprivation, it takes several weeks to have it out of your system. And physically, the impact was like after 1 week, my legs didn't hurt anymore. So, yeah.
And do you have any fears that it could be creating long-term issues for yourself?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question, but I don't think so because I think there's more research that says now it's purely the long, not very intensive running is very healthy. Of course, you don't have to go run this long, this far in 4 days, but the most unhealthy thing about it is probably the sleep deprivation. So not sleeping for 4 nights has probably some effect on the brain. But yeah, if you have a football career with all these head strikes of the ball, that's probably much unhealthier for your brain. So I don't want to do it too many times in a year, but that's mainly for the sleep deprivation. But long and slow running is just healthy.
And I'm sure you always get asked this, but where do you think the limit lies within yourself? Should you, if you were racing yourself, so you didn't have that issue of there being having to be two of you, and if you look at the other competitors out there, people like Courtney and Harvey are running, as you say, a tough loop in the States. Do you think there's anyone out there that you know who you think, if they came over to Belgium, would give you a run for your money, or be a favourite?
Yeah, well, that comes with this set of rules. Huh? You don't. I get asked a lot. Next time, are you gonna go? Like when we didn't get to 100 yet, are you gonna go for 100, or are you gonna break the record again? You can't say, because there's have to be two of you, and I can't predict if I will be the one that will be the last one if there's two of us and I'm with them. So and of all these other races, the like the winner in the United States, probably the Japanese, the Australian, all these winners, they were good enough to go further than they did because they had to stop. So if they had been Belgians, they would have been there with us, or maybe not all of them, but probably more than one. So it's also about being the right person in the right place. And I've been lucky to be in this situation a few times, to have, in this case, like two times it was a Belgian, or the Keith, the Irish guy. So you have to put yourself in this position a little bit by trying to be in the races where there's good people, and then make sure you show up yourself and perform. But yeah, you can't tell if you're gonna go, if this race is gonna bring you to any record or not. And how far I could go myself. I always feel like this time we were going into the 5th night. It already was the first time that I got through an entire fortnight, which was, I was curious about how it would be. And okay, I managed. And then you feel like if you get through this night, you're gonna get through the day also. So I don't know if Ivo and I would have continued, if we both would have gotten through the 5th night. I don't know.
And you have to wonder as well, with you mentioning how if you sleep for 10 minutes, you go too deep almost to be able to restore your energy levels afterwards. I'd suspect that the 5th night, from research I've read on sleep, you'd be more likely to go deep in less than 10 minutes, because they've already shown that you can go into, pass REM to deep sleep as an ultra runner very quickly in the middle of a race. And so it could be that it's almost impossible to sleep on that 5th time without going so deep so quickly that you never emerge fully.
That's possible. I don't know, but you could say the same thing about the 4th night, and probably for some people. Yeah, sorry. You could say, for some people it would be from the 2nd night or the 3rd. For me, it wasn't until after the 4th night. And if we would have gone in the 5th night, maybe I feel like the first few hours we would be able to get through, and then would be the question, indeed, as you say, would we be able to still go on, or would the sleep deprivation be too much?
And do you think then there's kind of grounds for trying to hold a world champs in Scandinavia, where there's 24-hour daylight?
In the right time of year? Yeah, I have no idea. That's interesting questions, but I don't know what would this be better, or I suppose in the end, if it's day or night, you do have to sleep, and so maybe in the end it doesn't matter anymore if there's daylight or nighttime. It's I never had to stop because of sleep deprivation before. 2 years ago with Karel Sabbe, when I did 74 loops, I did stop. It's I think the one backyard where I actually really had to stop because I couldn't finish a loop within the hour. So I basically timed out, and it was during daylight. So I always say I have the feeling you can get through the day always, but in that one time my legs were so massively swollen, and hurting, that I couldn't be fast enough to do 6.7 kilometers in an hour.
And why do you think that hasn't happened since?
Well, I've been thinking about how can I try to avoid this problem of the massive swollen legs, and I think the probably several things, like my body's getting used to it more. I only in 2020 I was doing ultra running for like 2 years and a half. Now it's been 4 years and a half. So I have the massage of the physio. She's also doing something. I don't know. It's called lymph drainage. I don't know how it's called in English. So and maybe eating better, everything that because my legs don't swell that massively anymore. So which what I'm very happy for. But
And
yeah.
what do your work make of it? Because are you taking 9 days off work, or are you going in that week where you can barely walk and you're in pain?
Well, we finished on Wednesday, and I took the whole week off. So I only work 4 days in a week, so I didn't have to work on Friday anyway. So I took 4 days off, and yeah, Ivo did the same thing. So we were prepared to go this long, and yeah, if it's finished Wednesday, you only have to go back on Monday. Yeah, you can be well enough to work again. So
Well, we've got a few questions, I think, from the do-badders. Let's quickly go and have a look. I think we've probably asked. I mean, a lot of people are interested in hallucinations. So, has that ever been an issue?
yeah, well, I don't. There's one occasion where I think I had some kind of an hallucination, but I usually don't hallucinate. I think we were talking about it with Ivo. We figured out why. Probably that's because I don't have enough imagination. So, but yeah, I I never actually did hallucinations like most other people do, but maybe there was one occasion which I still remember because it was a very special moment, and I treasure it. It was in the Legends Trail 500 kilometers. They did a 5 year anniversary. Normally it's 250 kilometers. They did a 500. And then when we went through the high fence in Belgium, it's the highest point in Belgium. It's like maximum just under 700 meters. It can be in winter, very windy, snowy, cold. And they predicted like 3 centimeters of snow, and there was like 40 centimeters. And so it was very hard, very sleep-wise, very difficult, but very beautiful. And then the last day of this race, there was still snow, and I was running slightly downhill on a road that looked like the same the whole time. And the sun was over there, the snowy fields. It was just very beautiful and a perfect moment. I was on my own. I was feeling very well. And then I started blinking my eyes every few seconds. And every time I blinked my eyes, I had the impression that I got zapped back in time for like 10 seconds. So I was looking at the road just in front of me, and whenever I blinked my eyes, it was still looking the same because of course the road was just looking the same for like a kilometer or something. But I did have the moment was so special that I was thinking, if I keep blinking my eyes, I can stay in this moment.
You can live forever.
Like forever. and at the same time, I was telling myself, I didn't know it wasn't actually real, or so I thought, but I was telling myself, if it turns out to be real, like you see in the movies where they have a time loop, I can just stop blinking my eyes and I can continue and go on. So it was just the most beautiful, perfect moment where my mind was like playing a little trick, which I wanted to follow, I think.
And we've got a question from Ultra Run Gen about how many crew do you have and how do they manage their time?
Well, in the backyard, because of we were in a building, so to make it not too crowded, you could have like one crew at a time, but you could switch them, or they could switch to sleep themselves, and also like some physio. So I actually had my wife, which you saw just passing by, and my good friend Jan, and then the physio Irit, and they were just like switching a little bit. And in May, when I did the 90 hours, it was Bart. So it's always some friends who know what I'm doing, who know what ultra running is about, and yeah, I'm very happy to have them.
Amazing. Well, congratulations on what is a
Mm.
phenomenal distance, and more impressive, a phenomenal amount of time to be racing, given you weren't sleeping for most of it. Any other questions to throw into the mix, Jody?
No. I just wonder, because you've obviously you're like very humble in terms of the way that you kind of talk about what your performance and everything else like that. But I don't know whether I'm on the side of some of the people who who you kind of run with, and whether this is just one giant mind game that you're playing, by being on this podcast as well, just to scare them as well. So, but no, it's been really fascinating, because I think this is, like I said, we spoke about this right from the start. Like, I remember having the conversation when we talked about, like, what were the Belgians doing running so fast, compared with Americans? Like, what is this like tactic that we've like not heard of? And what were they doing? Was it strategic, or was it an accident? And then as we kind of followed it over the years.
Yeah, no, we just have a very easy course, so that's why we're maybe faster than
tactical.
Yeah, America's just easy. It's just easy. Yeah, go out hard in the first few. That's it.
And when are you mentioned you're out to lads? When are you heading out there?
Well, it's next year it's Bigs in Tennessee. So every other year we have the individual championships in October, and then the other year it's gonna be the team championships, like this year and 2 years ago. So yeah, I'm looking forward to actually see how it's gonna go on the original historical backyard course.
And will Harvey be back?
I think so. He'll be there, I suppose. He'll be qualified.
Cool. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. I met him once, and he's the nicest guy. So looking forward to meet him again, and yeah, compete and chat with him. So.
Well, good luck at Bigs, and yeah, I hope it goes well. I hope the two of you just take things to a new level. So congratulations again, and thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you.
What a lovely fellow.
Oh yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like the temptation to think, oh wait a minute, this is all some really clever mind game, rather than just I got lucky first time, did really well, everything fell into place, bish bash bosh,
found my rhythm.
There we go. Yeah, and maybe that's it. But that's what I mean. I don't want to do a backyard ultra, because I think it sounds awful. It doesn't appeal to me at all. But it absolutely goes back to exactly what Laz said when we spoke to him about it, about why it was created, and it was like the ultimate leveler. Like, there is no way you'd have looked at either his performances or anything else and thought, this is the guy to beat. This is the guy to beat, and this is the guy who's going to dominate it, because it transforms it from being a physical and athletic endurance, which it is a massive physical and athletic endurance test, but it's a bigger mental test than that. No matter how huge the endurance test is, the mental test is way harder, and that's quite something to build.
But I really do wonder how much difference that the extra intensity, the extra difficulty of the American course makes, and that's what's going to be fascinating to see. Firstly, now that Harvey has someone who you'd assume they'll both be there at the distances Harvey's reached before. So how far can they push each other? But also,
I just love the idea. It's just like, obviously your course is much harder. That's how it is, And I just like, look at me, you wouldn't expect me to do anything, And I'm pretty. It's everything about it kind of screams like, there's a sting in the tail here. There's a sting in the tail, like,
And the fact that he's now done those distances and people at Bigs haven't. So when they're going into their fourth night, as he said,
You're intimidated. I've got nothing to do with it, but you are intimidated by my pedigree, and
exactly.
It's true.
Yeah. Just bask in my.
I just happen to run, about 50 times further than you've ever run. But let's race, eh? Let's race. Let's see how it goes. It's great.
Indeed. Well, D-Baz, if you like this episode, then we've spoken to quite a few people involved before. We spoke to Courtney about when she smashed the Big's backyard record to start with. We've spoken to Harvey. I ran with him, the MDS with him, so we caught up with him about that and about the backyard and about running with his dad doing, I think he took on the Appalachian Trail or similar. And of course, we've spoken to Laz 3 times, maybe.
We've spoken to him in lots of different ways and in lots of different places. So I feel like, we're best buds now, aren't we? Like,
exactly. There's plenty of content out there for you to listen to. If there are any guests or topics you'd like us to discuss in the future, then message me, david@badboyrunning.com, or message on Instagram. And if you'd like to leave us a review, obviously subscribe. What should the keyword of the review be?
Mind games.
Mind games. Get mind games in the review when you're leaving it. 5 stars, please. And it will really help us get future guests.
Yeah, and also, we don't really mention this a lot, but you've got the opportunity to ask questions. And so if you make sure that you follow our channels, Instagram, Facebook page, or drop into the group on Facebook, just look at Bad Boy Running Podcast in the search, and we'll ask you 3 questions again. But if you follow those, every week we post who we're speaking to next. So make sure that you're kind of following it, and you can ask your questions as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for listening, guys. And we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Fuck you, buddy.